What is that supposed to be? The plan. The plan? Yeah. Yo. Yeah, seafood. Yeah. That's a seagull. That's a seagull. It's the same thing. The pelican has like a big beak. No, that's a seagull. That's not a pelican. The pelican, the one with the big mouth, but then you know, it's always come inside and then they go to. No.
Okay, everybody, we've got some action there. We've got strong to upload the chapter. I'm sorry for anything that has happened so far this morning. I'm not exactly sure where the origin of the problem lies. I know internet is very slow, but I don't think that's the reason. So we'll upload chapter 7 that we'll do today. So it can be on the screen there for you. We're almost getting there. Thanks for those who've joined already.
I'm going to wait until after 8. You guys, you try these things. It's not that.
Right, can anybody see?
My computer sounds. Yeah. I just recorded my video, and my phone video is in app. Did you guys get slides? No, I just use the model. So you just put that one thing. So you don't like the starting slide. So it's your screen share and your little video on the side. Yeah. What does that?
Morning, everybody. Not sure where chapter 7 went now. It's one of these things that we'll figure out as we go along. Hopefully we improve. We'll improve along the way. But welcome anyway to those who are on board. Can everybody hear me? I'm especially talking to those online. Any one of you can just indicate to me if you can hear me.
But you don't have. Are you next class online? It's still hard.
Ours at least 9.
Yeah. I would say you guys can come over.
Is the Wi-Fi fast enough?
Yeah. It's just the phone.
Is the Wi-Fi fast enough at that speed house? Yeah, that's good.
I'm going to make names for you. What did you get?
This construction vehicle.
Right, everybody. Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is about the customer's perception. Okay, those in front of me, join me. Those in front of me. Let's give a second bite to this cherry, please. There's a lot of people who've joined us. I'm not sure if everybody's there. Fortunately, the nice thing is that you can actually print the attendance at the end of the day. That's the other benefits. So there are some benefits. There are some initial growing pains this morning. I apologize for that. it would probably have been wise to actually have a second period and not a first period, to not have a first period after the long weekend. All systems and everybody is probably not as sharp as they were, or have become lazy over 4 days. I definitely have become lazy because I went into a new routine, and that was of getting up not later, because I mean I usually get up. I'm a morning person, so I mean, but still, just that there's no rush in the morning. But on the subject, and I'll post an announcement after the session, and when I have clarity about it. Questions about the assignment, questions about Turnitin, submitting. Just put a hold on that. Don't stress about it. There's only one assignment. You all have completed the assignment because you had to submit it today. When it comes to the submission, just hang on a bit. Those of you who have it submitted already, it's also fine. Don't worry about that. There are a few things I want to just resolve during the course of the morning, which I couldn't do with our technical staff over the weekend. Okay, so relax. Don't worry about the assignment. I will reply to those who've emailed me personally, and I will also put an announcement out. Okay, but I'll have that sorted. And I think it is something to do with the fact that there were different dates set because we had part A, B, and C. But forget about that at the moment. Let's continue to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is quite an interesting one because there's always a perception, and one of the biggest challenges that marketers have is that the perception that a customer have is based very often on experience, previous experiences, and their beliefs, and you only know what you know, and based on that, you very often form an opinion, and that obviously results in the perception that you have about something, and it's not cast in stone, though. It can change. So what we are going to be looking at in chapter 7 is to ensure that we try and understand from a marketer's point of view better how these perceptions are formed, because there is a process that the perceptions are formed. There are 4 different steps that the consumer goes through to form a perception, and then also how people learn. There are different processes of learning. Those are I think that sort of forms the backbone of chapter 7 in my opinion. Right, let's go to why is my mouse now on strike? Now my mouse is on strike. Right. If we look at what you guys are confronted with on a daily basis, as consumers, I think I'm not sure about the actual factual correctness of this, but I think recently I heard a conversation about the number of messages or number of exposures through different platforms that consumers on a daily basis receive. The number 5,000 was mentioned. I'm not sure if that's exactly true, but if you actually look at listening on the radio, you hear the same ad 3-4 times, and maybe it's one of those, or maybe every time that message is played, is counted as an exposure. You drive past billboards, you get notifications, WhatsApps, SMSs, you see commercials on television. I can actually believe that it's a high number. I'm not exactly sure, as I said, if that is true, but in the field of marketing, this exposure that you receive on a daily basis to the amount of exposure you receive, the messages, the information, there's a total information overload that consumers get on a daily basis. It's referred to as customer fatigue, and the strange thing about this is that, believe it or not, and that's where the challenge lies for marketers, is the fact that the consumer only pays attention to to those things that interest him or that's of value to him. Let's say, for instance, you're in the market to buy a new vehicle or a new cell phone for that matter. You will pay more attention to commercials or any form of exposure, that relates to what your specific need is at that stage. If you are very hungry because you haven't eaten in 3 days because you've been in a desert, you will pay more attention to ads about food and drink. If you're in the market to buy a house, but you've just recently, or let's say, for instance, you just recently bought a house or a car for that matter, you will not pay as much attention to any form of exposure by marketers related to that subject. If you bought a vehicle last week, you're not going to be looking at vehicle ads as much. You are still going to be very happy with what you have bought. Okay, and that's where the challenge lies for marketers, because marketers need to very, very carefully manipulate, because that's, well, for lack of a better word, pursue is the word that they persuade is the word that persuade is the word that they use in marketing communication. If you can remember correctly from last year, marketing communication, commercials, public relations, direct selling, whatever form of whatever platform and method marketers use to get the message across to the consumer is an attempt to inform them, but also to persuade them to choose their products. So the challenge with perception is that marketers don't always, or customers don't always react in the way that marketers intended them to. There's an image on the screen of a billboard advertisement. Save the whales. If you look at that particular image, it's actually an advertisement to convert your lifestyle to becoming vegetarian. So it can be very confusing. In that case, it's more than just confusing, it's bad taste. There's a Dettol commercial that also has somebody, you can just see the guy's arm in the image that is dripping with blood as he walks away, and somebody in the background lies with a knife in his chest. And he says, when normal soap is not good enough, okay, you need something stronger. So you know what? That image itself is actually not a very good image. So the message that was intended was, yes, Dettol is a much stronger cleaning detergent than normal soap, but just the image tells a total different, or gets a total different message across to the consumer. So the challenge lies for marketers to ensure that they structure their commercials, the advertisements, whatever marketing communication platform they use, in such a manner that the message that they want the consumer to get is, in other words, the way they intended it to reach the consumer, and the message they want to convey to the consumer is actually the same thing. Right. Perception, therefore, if we summarize it, perception, if you want to define it, is the process by which people select, organize, and interpret the information that they get to form a meaningful picture for themselves. And they do this through their senses of sight, hearing, taste, and touch. So in other words, the picture that they paint themselves is based on that. We'll go through the different steps that consumers follow to form a perception of something. It starts with the exposure to a specific stimuli that happens through this activation of senses. There was an interesting chat on the radio this morning about, because we know that one of the side effects to many people who have recovered from COVID is that you lose your taste or your sense of smell and taste, or both for that matter. And imagine that. That must be quite strange. If you knew, imagine, I know, for instance, if I hate if the milk is expired. I always, if I open the milk before I put it in my cereal or my coffee, I smell it. Imagine you can't smell it. Imagine you can't smell if it's actually gone off. You can't take. Well, hopefully both senses are gone. Yes, but because if you can taste it, if you can't taste it either, it's also not going to make a difference. But imagine, and I think one of the callers that phoned in actually said that happened to him. It's been longer than a year. He recovered from COVID in May last year, and he's lost complete his sense of smelling as well as tasting. But he's an adult, so he knows what milk tastes like. He knows what a steak tastes like. He knows what a specific flavor tastes like. He's been used to that. So when he sees it, he's quite interesting. I mean, he could paint a picture in his mind of how it tastes because he knows what it tastes like before he actually lost the smell. But there is a condition that you are born with or that over years develop where that's not the case. So if you've never been able to smell anything, it's going to be very difficult to paint that picture in your mind as to what it would be. They actually one of the clips they played on the radio was of that guy from Breaking Bad.
The drug dealer.
Yeah. He said he dated a girl a couple of years ago, actually, who couldn't smell anything. She didn't have a sense of smelling. And then he obviously said, well, that's quite great. I can eat anything during the day. I can come back having how many beers, you can't smell me. And I can actually pass on flatulence as well, and then they were driving somewhere, and then she actually tapped him on the shoulder and says, you know what happens when you lose some of your senses? It heightens some of the others. I may not be able to smell something, but I definitely heard that. Okay, so obviously it's not always a benefit. But yes, it is difficult. But imagine, I mean, if you we're working with Warren wants to add something. Yes, Warren.
It's an advert that it's like a first date.
Yes.
And you open the car door for her, and she gets in, and then she parks. And then the guy gets into the seat and he's like, so have you met my double date?
I saw it. I can't recall. I think it's a. I'm not sure what ad it is, but you're quite right. I mean, she wasn't aware of the people in the back seat. Yes. It's fair to say that we've all experienced this because, as far as I know, most of you have all your senses and they are all functional. Let's assume that. Now, for people in Centurion and for people in Bellville, I mean, you go to different malls and you go to different joints when you go out for supper and for a beer or so. How much do you think does that first impression when you walk into a shopping mall? Would you say that the first sense that comes to becomes active or is triggered is one of sight or of smell?
So I think it's sight or smell, because a lot of the entrances at now, the more that we go to,
yes,
they either put in like this bright color, like a blue cinnamon,
yeah,
or like the when you walk in the main entrances, all the different fast foods with the different color lights and things like that. So I think they must have strategically put those like colorful and good smiling places at all the entrances.
Yes, I think that's definitely true. Yes, probably. I would like to believe that you look where you're walking first before you smell and use all your other senses. for that matter. But it depends again on what your specific need is at that point. If you're very hungry, and if you actually are on your way out to go to a restaurant, if you walk into a mall, your sense of smell would be very alert. And there is nothing. You might not even be hungry. Let's say, for instance, you as the SRC decided you're going to buy some boerewors rolls outside. Everybody went into class this morning. Nobody knew about anything. All of a sudden, they smell. There's something going on. They might not have been necessarily interested in a particular product or that specific product for that matter, but now all of a sudden, they might not even have been hungry. And now all of a sudden, oh, hello, that smells nice. And you're going to spend the $20 that you probably wouldn't have spent.
So could we say that's like an invasive form of marketing?
It's a very clever way of heightening or stimulating a particular sense, because we know that the perceptions that most people form, as we've just indicated in our definition, is that they try and paint the picture for themselves of what they like and what's nice, based on how their senses react to smells and noises and stuff like that. On the other hand, the exact opposite could be true as well. You could actually have a very bad experience because it's a very noisy place. You're in a restaurant, for instance, and it's just not. I mean, that's like taking taking somebody special in your life to a restaurant that actually has a nice ambiance and a relaxing, calming atmosphere, top quality food. Not that food at your at places like Spur and Panarottis and those are not necessarily good. The fact of the matter is, however, there's a bigger crowd and a bigger noise, and some people prefer not to be in an environment like that. So obviously, I think people working in an environment like that is also going to the service that they will offer the customer is also going to be affected by that, because if you're in a nice, relaxed environment where you've got not too many noises in the background, for instance, you will definitely find that that particular waiter is probably going to also is also going to feel like they want to, because they're relaxed, they will perform better. Where in a family restaurant, you rushed all the time. You actually want them to leave as quickly as possible, because the music is loud. You've got playing areas full of kids and stuff like that. So all of that compiles to that. The same happens when you're queuing, for instance. If you're uncomfortable, if you are standing in a queue, firstly, people don't like to queue. People don't like to queue in the first place. Let's say, for instance, now they queue in a very confined space where it's stifling, the aircon's not working, it's hot, and you become very irritated. That also is something that forms a negative perception about. Almost when you get to the front, you don't expect to get good service based on what you've experienced up to that point. Okay, so perception, as I said, yes, it goes. It's a process that's followed. It's a process that's followed. One thing that we need to also remember, however, is that unlike a computer, your brain is like a computer. You store all the information in different files. But when you actually, a computer, you can just click on a particular file, so there's a structure. You can go to that file if you want access to a certain. In the human mind, it actually, you sort of store the files, but you only retrieve the ones that is appropriate to you, and that is comfortable to you. Okay, yes. Hey?
The chat is live, and like it pops up every.
Yes. My goodness. Live session, CB21, yeah. Live session, CB21. We are busy with it. There are people in the session. Okay. So perception, we have to remember, however, is selective. You as the customer will select what is appropriate to you. It's subjective as well, and is very much based on your personal experiences. Those are the three things that 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 is very evident with human perception. Right. Let's see what we refer to as perception being selective. You have to work through a lot of information and process a lot of information, as we referred to on the first and at the introduction, customer fatigue, and the messages that you will pay attention to are the ones that is the ones that's most relevant to you. That image at the bottom of the screen. Image at the bottom of the screen is probably the best to explain the challenges that consumers are faced with in processing all the information that they are exposed to on a daily basis. It's also subjective. You've all heard the expression that men are from Venus and women are from Mars, or men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Basically stating the obvious that we are different. We're different types of individuals. We see things differently. I know, for instance, one thing that we do know is that women pay a lot of attention, or is very alert to attention. If we look at the next slide, for instance, look at the images on your left-hand side. That pink dress, that cocktail evening dress on the left-hand side. That's how women see that dress. Men see, oh, it's something pink and there's black in it as well. Okay, I'm generalizing now, but that is how those are different perceptions, because our perceptions are subjective as well. If we look at this, if we look at the screen, the image on the right-hand side of the screen, I think that's very accurate. How we see ourselves in the mirror. I think that women are quite often, yes, they see themselves as they see themselves always as less appealing as they are. We also know that mirrors in shopping malls make you appear different. Okay, but then also very true. There's one thing that I do know, and my mother's was it my? I'm not sure. I think it's my wife. She actually said to me, when you're shopping, if you do not like a particular pair of pants or a shirt or a dress, if you do not like that in the shop, you will not wear it. So it needs to look good for you in the shop. You buy it, and its chances are very good that you'll wear it. Men, on the other hand, we all think that we are Brad Pitts or Ryan Goslings or whatever, with six packs and David Beckham's. While I think the opposite is true. Right. Let's look at a few images that Let's look at a few other images, people. Oi, relax here. Let's look at some more images as we see it and as how women see it. Let's look at this particular picture. The lady on the left-hand side. That's the perfect female body according to women. Okay, where the one on the right-hand side is the perfect female body according to men. To be honest with you, I'm not even in the middle. It's, yeah, but how did they get? You can actually, when you look at the slides in more detail, if you look at the slides in more detail, you will see that my goodness me. Where's our chapter gone? It's there. Hey? It's going back. It's an interesting morning. Let's put it this way. My perception of this morning is at this point not a good one. But I know we can improve because I'm selective. I'm basing it on current experience. I'm not basing it on the past. If the next session goes exactly the same, then we know we have a problem because then the perception is going to be affected by previous experience. So what I perceive the next session would be based on today's experience is probably not a positive one. However, if we're back on the screen and we look at the images, I don't know. We split a sort of almost 50-50 here in now. It's very difficult. It's very difficult in class if we're not 50-50 split. But the guys, what do you think? Do you think that's accurate? Those accurate images or a classification?
So I think it's a generalization.
Of course it is.
And in, I think, marketing planning or something like that, we were told that as marketers, or it might have been even considered, I'm not sure, that as marketers we generalize quite often.
We do, yes.
So, but that's all part and parcel of like estimating and things like that. But I don't think that men in general perceive women as being on the right side or the left. I don't know. But you know what I'm trying to say?
It's very,
all men will perceive women in different ways.
true.
So that might not be the ideal man for the ideal woman for every man.
What I think I need to check and just see what, and I'm pretty sure that the source that was used for these were actually from the UK. So it might be based on that particular a survey done amongst men in the UK, men and women in the UK for that matter. I think it's also if you look at the the blue, the letters actually indicate which body part they've chose to collectively have that kind of image. If you look at the men, Scarlett Johansson, Morgan Fox, Kim Kardashian, those are all sort of. I'm not sure if they're that favorable among females as they are among men, for instance.
So what does that one say?
The one on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Hair, Duchess of Cambridge. Face, Cara Delevingne. Then Jennifer Aniston when it comes to breast, Emma Watson when it comes to hips, Gwyneth Paltrow when it's stomach, Ellie McPherson, that swimsuit model when it comes to legs. So, yeah, as I said, it's a brilliant demonstration of how perception plays a very, very influential role in consumers reaching a decision. The senses involved here, sight. So it might be that on a particular day you see a particular woman in a certain dress, and that whole package creates an image, and now that is what contributes to forming the perception that you might have about. Let's go to the men. Ladies, what do you think if we compare those two? The one on the the one on the left is how women see the perfect man, and the one on the right with the David Beckham face is how, I don't know. Again, I'm pretty much sure, again, based on what I believe, I'm not 100% sure, is the source of the study and the images, it being the United Kingdom. A lot of this makes sense, and I'm pretty sure if we compare it, it's going to be different globally. Right. Let's just finish off the session for today. I think we're almost done anyway. Where's my time? What's the time saying? Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes to go. Perception is definitely based on your personal experience, yes, without a doubt. We know that. It builds a sort of stable cognition for the individual, which then obviously determines what the particular perception means to them. I think the image of the bad haircut is a very good example. I think if you've had a bad experience in a particular restaurant, if you've had a bad experience at a particular drive-through, if you've had a bad experience with a particular service provider, that's going to be difficult to revert. And that's why it's so important that right from the start, you provide the correct combination, and we'll see that in the next slides later in the chapter. The combination of using the correct colors, the correct noises, the correct layout of a commercial or advert, for instance, because that first exposure to a large extent or plays a much bigger role in forming a perception, because the challenge that we posed right at the start of the session was that marketers want the message to get across the way they intended it. They want everything that could muddy that and that could influence that the correct message, or the message being received and interpreted in the way that it was intended by the consumer. They want as much or as little interference in the process, because once that perception has been established, then especially because customers are so selective, and because they get there are too many alternatives available for them just to choose. Boom, no, I like that one, I don't like that one. It's like I spoke to somebody on the weekend again about the new way of marketing in fitness centers, for instance. If you walk into a Virgin Active gym and you look at the wall there, they've got pictures about, what's that, A3 size pictures, and the names underneath and the qualifications of all the personal trainers. They all have the same Virgin Active clothing on. They are just different faces. How do you select a personal trainer for yourself? Who would you think is going to be the best based on that? It must be completely different, people. There must be a better way of informing your customers of what your abilities are. In my opinion, it's videos online. Show people what you can do. Actually get your feet on the floor and walk amongst the customers and assist them, help them. Then they can see if you're knowledgeable. Very often in certain professions, the knowledge of the individual. I had one just before the long weekend. I had a stationary bike delivered that somebody kept for me. Just before I moved in, before lockdown, and obviously it hasn't been used and needed service. I called somebody who I've used in the past, and he came out to me. Him and his team of 3 people got the bike. Everything is up and down, and they're servicing it and the belt and everything so it could work properly. And we were having a conversation about the weather and everything in general, and the long weekend ahead, and what their plans are and what their preferences are. And I mean, and before I know it, 10 minutes later, boom, they said, okay, done. Competent individual, didn't get bothered at all with anything, didn't tell me what he can do. He just did it, and he showed me how competent he is. I will definitely use that person again if I need maintenance on any training equipment in future. But that is, again, people, so important that we get the correct message across, because then the chances of it being interpreted in the way that you wanted it to is going to be spot on. Okay, so we're done for the day, I think. As I said at the beginning, for those who've joined later, don't be phased about your assignments at the moment. There are some issues regarding Turnitin that I just want clarified. If you have submitted already, also don't go into stress or any. This is not intended to create any anxiety. Just relax. I will post something later today regarding that. This is your only assignment. We want it done correctly, and we want it done fairly. So I will definitely get back to you, and I will reply to the emails that have been sent to me, and I also will post an announcement so there's clarity amongst everybody. Okay. I'll see you again on Thursday. Thank you very much.
So she did not hand in anything until you let us know about Turnitin.